December 16th, 1773, a group of colonists stages the Boston Tea Party. But how did Britain react to this bold act of protest? And what makes it such a pivotal event in the American Revolution? Also, how did Boston celebrate the Tea Party's 250th anniversary in 2023? Tensions in Boston had been simmering for years. Public demonstrations began in the city going back to the Stamp Act riots of 1765, leading to the formation of secret societies known as Sons of Liberty, and to the rallying cry, "No taxation without representation." Colonists' reactions to the 1768 Townshend Acts led to an increased presence of armed British soldiers in the city. Opposition to these acts triggered the 1770 Boston Massacre. The Tea Act of 1773 placed a small tax on the colonists' drink of choice and gave the British East India Company a monopoly on the tea trade. 3 ships, the Dartmouth, the Beaver, and the Eleanor, arrived in Boston carrying 342 chests of East India Company tea with a value of over $1 million today. Although from the East India Company, the tea, in fact, was not grown in India, but in China. Dock workers, many of them Sons of Liberty, refused to unload the cargo. 5,000 frustrated Patriots led by Samuel Adams rallied at the Old South Meeting House to discuss their next move. A plan was put forward and a vote was taken in that historic church, the largest in Boston at the time. That evening, hundreds marched to Boston's Griffin Wharf, many of them poorly disguised as Mohawk Indians. The process of disposing of the tea took some time, about 3 hours in fact. No members of the ship's crews were harmed. One colonist, John Crane, was struck in the head by a tea chest that was being raised using block and tackle from the hold of one of the ships. He was knocked cold and presumed dead, so they hid his body under some sawdust at a carpenter's shop near the wharf. When they returned later, it was discovered that Crane was very much alive. Many of those who participated fled the city temporarily to evade authorities. Only one of the original tea chests has survived to this day and can be found in a small museum near the location of the original Tea Party. When Mrs. Lewis and I visited Boston in 2024, we made sure to visit the museum, where you can participate in the Boston Tea Party experience and throw your own chest of tea in the harbor. The British government's reaction to the Boston Tea Party was severe. Parliament passed the Coercive Acts, which essentially put the colony of Massachusetts under martial law. All public meetings in Boston were banned. A curfew was put in place for all residents of the city. Patriots began referring to the Coercive Acts as the Intolerable Acts. The colonists' reaction to these acts is what is so important. They did not bow down to British authority, but instead called a meeting of leaders across the colonies at Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia. We call this the First Continental Congress. There, these colonies, which had essentially acted almost like 13 independent nations for many years, showed solidarity with Massachusetts. During the Congress, Patrick Henry of Virginia made a bold and telling statement when he exclaimed, "I am not a Virginian. I am an American." The delegates agree as united colonies to petition the king, to boycott all British goods, and to arm and train local militias. The colonial rebellion was becoming a revolution. The Boston Tea Party is one of the pivotal events of the American Revolution. Many of those who participated that night are buried in Boston's Copp's Hill burying ground. On December 16th, 2023, Boston celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party by reenacting the events of that famous evening in 1773. The group sponsoring the festivities said that more than 2,000 donations of loose tea were received from all 50 states and from all around the globe, in addition to 250 pounds from London's East India Company, the same company where the tea came from 250 years ago. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1670, Welsh buccaneer Henry Morgan begins an expedition that sacks the rich Spanish city of Panama. In 1770, Ludwig van Beethoven, one of the greatest composers in history, is born in Bonn, Germany. In 1775, celebrated Pride and Prejudice novelist Jane Austen is born in Hampshire, England. In 1944, Germany launches its last major offensive of World War II, known as the Battle of the Bulge. In 1973, O.J. Simpson becomes the first NFL player to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season. In 1998, U.S. President Clinton orders airstrikes against Iraq for refusing to cooperate with UN inspectors. In 2009, blockbuster film Avatar, which holds the all-time box office record, is released in theaters. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Where did the Wright brothers make the first successful flight in a self-propelled aircraft? Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or North Carolina? Liked learning about the Boston Tea Party? Then you'll love this one about another central event of the American Revolution, the Boston Massacre. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.